In this explainer, we're diving into a really powerful shift in supply chain planning. We're talking about moving away from old-school guessing games and into real-time responsive action. We'll break down exactly what demand-driven replenishment, or DDR for short, is all about and how it really comes to life inside SAP S4Hana.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to talk about the big flaw in the way things have always been done. Then, we'll see the painful ripple effect it causes. After that, we'll introduce a whole new way of thinking, the philosophy of flow. And finally, we'll get practical and look at SAP's answer, DDR, walking through the process and the actual apps you'd use. Let's get into it.
So first up, let's talk about the old way. We have to understand the system that's been the beating heart of ERP for, over 50 years now? I'm talking about Traditional Material Requirements Planning, or MRP. For decades, this was the engine that made supply chains run.
Okay, this slide really sets the stage for the big showdown. On one side, you've got traditional MRP. It's all about pushing inventory out there based on a forecast, which, let's be honest, is basically a sophisticated guess. But on the other side, you have demand-driven planning, or DDR. This is a total game changer. It pulls inventory into the system based on what people are actually buying right now.
And you really have to think about where this old system came from. MRP was born in a post-war era. Back then, factory capacity was the big constraint, and demand was pretty predictable. So this idea of just-in-time and aiming for zero inventory, it was genius. It made perfect sense. But fast forward to today. Our world is anything but stable. We've got insane demand swings and crazy complex global supply chains. That old zero inventory mindset doesn't make you efficient anymore. It just makes you fragile. And that fragility, it leads us right to the #1 headache for pretty much any supply chain planner. It's a phenomenon that has a great name: supply chain whiplash. You might also know it by its more formal name, the bullwhip effect.
The best way to think about this is like that game of telephone we played as kids. One person whispers a tiny message, and by the time it gets to the end of the line, it's completely warped and exaggerated. That's the bullwhip effect in a nutshell. Each link in the supply chain just doesn't have clear visibility, so they're all just reacting to distorted signals, not the real, actual demand from the customer. So check this out. It all starts small. A customer changes their buying habits just a tiny bit. The company that sells to them, the OEM, sees this and thinks, better be safe, and they place a slightly bigger order with their supplier. Now that Tier 1 supplier sees the bigger order and they panic a little, so they amplify it even more to build their own safety cushion. You see where this is going, right? By the time you get all the way back to the raw material supplier, that tiny little ripple in customer demand has become a massive crashing tidal wave. And the consequences of this are, frankly, a nightmare for the business. You're constantly whipsawed between two terrible options. Either you have mountains of inventory just sitting there, costing you a fortune in storage and tying up cash, or you have nothing on the shelves, you can't deliver, and your customers are getting angry. It's an incredibly painful place to be.
Okay, so enough about the problem. How in the world do we fix this mess? Well, when a problem is this deep, you can't just put a Band-Aid on it. You can't just tweak the old system. You need a complete, fundamental shift in how you think. And that new philosophy can be summed up in one powerful word: flow. This is where DDMRP comes in. That stands for Demand-Driven Material Requirements Planning. And listen, this is not just another piece of software or a new button to click, it's a whole new philosophy. Its one and only goal is to protect and promote the smooth, predictable flow of materials, no matter how crazy and chaotic the world gets. And it really boils down to 3 core ideas. First, you create buffers at strategic points to absorb all that crazy variation. It dampens the noise. Second, and this is huge, you stop forecasting and start reacting to actual sales. You replenish what's been sold, period. And third, you create crystal clear visibility for everyone so they can focus their energy on what's most urgent right now. Okay, so that all sounds great in theory, right? But how do you actually do this inside a real system like SAP? Well, that's exactly where SAP's Demand-Driven Replenishment, or DDR, enters the picture. Think of DDR as the practical, hands-on toolkit that brings that DDMRP philosophy to life in S4Hana. It's SAP's official solution for this, and it's even certified by the Demand-Driven Institute. So you know this isn't just something they dreamed up, it's built on a proven, solid foundation.
And the absolute core idea here is something called a decoupling point.
The best analogy is to think of them as shock absorbers for your supply chain. You don't put shock absorbers on every single inch of your car, right? You put them in strategic spots. It's the same thing here. You place these inventory buffers at key points to absorb the bumps and shocks coming from both your customers and your suppliers. It creates stability and protects that smooth flow of materials. So, what does this actually look like in practice? How do you run this day to day? Well, the entire process is broken down into 5 clear, logical steps. And here they are. This is the rhythm of demand-driven planning. 1. Position. You figure out the smartest places to put those buffers. 2. Protect. You calculate exactly how big those buffers need to be. 3. Pull. This is key. You generate new orders only when stuff is actually consumed. 4. Adjust. Because nothing stays the same, you dynamically adjust your buffers as conditions change. And 5. Prioritize. You use real-time data to see what needs attention right now.
Okay, now for all of you SAP students and planners out there, let's get into the weeds a little bit. Let's look at the actual SAP Fiori apps you'd be using to make all this happen. We'll start with the setup. So your journey really begins with these setup apps. This is where you do the strategic work. You'll use these tools to classify your products, looking at things like their value to the business, how much their demand swings around, and their lead times. The cool part is, this isn't about your gut feeling. It's a systematic, data-driven process to find the perfect spots for those buffers. After you flag the right products, you let the system do the heavy lifting and calculate the ideal starting buffer levels for you.
Now, once all that setup is done, managing the system day-to-day becomes super visual and intuitive. The whole idea is to manage these buffers using a simple traffic light system. It's all about color-coded zones.
It couldn't be simpler, really. If your inventory level is in the green zone, you're golden. Plenty of stock, no worries. When it dips into the yellow zone, that's your signal. Ding, ding, ding. Time to reorder. And the red zone, that's your critical safety net, the buffer that protects you from a stock out. It's a beautifully simple visual way to know exactly where to focus your attention. So why go through all this? What's the big payoff? Look, this isn't just about implementing new software, it's a genuine business transformation. The results are huge. You finally get that smooth, sustainable flow of materials. That means you're holding way less inventory, which frees up a ton of cash. And the best part? Your service levels go up. Your customers are happy because they get what they ordered on time. It's a win-win-win. So I'll leave you with this final thought. As our supply chains get more and more complex and the world gets more and more volatile, making this shift, it's not really an if anymore, is it? Moving away from a rigid past based on forecasts and into a flexible future where you sense and respond to reality, that is absolutely essential for building the kind of resilient, agile supply chain that can survive and thrive tomorrow. All right,